Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Palace podcast brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. I've just found out Apple will no longer be protecting my photos with end-to-end encryption due to Wale, the UK government. So I've been scrambling to delete everything in my cloud folder marked Dean Henderson brackets lovely hands. I'll tackle John Philip Mateta brackets baby oil tomorrow. With me today is Alex Waite. How are you doing, Alex?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Joe. It's quite apt that you mentioned baby oil, considering our opponents.
Yeah.
One of their attackers, who's sort of renowned, probably should get a sponsor for Johnson and Johnson baby oil coming up on
my mind today.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't know that about Apple though, so luckily I'm not.
Yeah,
looking, so.
I didn't really read beyond the headline, to be honest. Yeah, some kind of row has led to them to no longer end-to-end encrypt your data. So if you're concerned, if you've got maps of buried bodies, listeners, take them off the cloud now. Take them off the cloud now.
Yeah, you shouldn't be listening to this if you've got to cover that up. You've got more pressing issues.
Distractions. Stressful life, I'm sure. Today, we're going to give our final thoughts ahead of Palace's trip to Craven Cottage. We're also going to assess Glasner's first complete year in charge of the Eagles and finish up by embracing our inner Sergio Leone's brackets. Didn't he used to play for West Ham? Start with some team news for the Fulham game. The big news for Palace is that while the likes of Decore and Riyadh remain injured, Glasner thinks Eze should be fit to start again. Obviously, came off the bench last time out. Does that please you a lot, Alex? Do you think this is the kind of game where Eze could have a big impact?
Yeah, I think every game is a game where Eze can make an impact. Really, he is that good, and he's got that much quality. I do feel like we could have done with him against Everton. We just lacked like a bit of just finesse and a bit of composure at times. Like, Sarr hit the bar in the first half. And there were just a few like scrappy opportunities where I think Eze might have, if he was on the end of one of them, he might have had more joy. And yeah, just his impact and his presence is like so clear when he comes on. And he's so like, he's way too good to not start if he's fit, like he is our best player by quite a stretch. So yeah, if he is fit, like he's got to play. It's just as simple as that, really. I mean, we've given chances to Deveni and Kamada, and they're obviously all right. Like, and Deveni's a young player, so he's still learning, and it's like neither of them really have a patch on Eze. So if he's fit and available, yeah, he's got to play. What he can bring against Fulham, their defence, their sort of defensive four of Anderson, Bassi. I'm not sure who their two holding midfielders are. Reed and Saloon.
Yeah, I think last time out it was like Lukic and Berger, wasn't it? I think was the pretty a fairly robust pair of holding midfielders.
Yeah, it's a tough four, whoever plays usually, like to get past. Very experienced as well, and like, yeah, they're just obviously very good, and they don't lose a lot of games, Fulham. So yeah, it's one where Eze would be handy if he is available, which it looks like he is. So fingers crossed he can start.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. It will depend probably a bit on how much Fulham feel now, given they're at home, given what a good position they're in the table, within reach of European places in 8th at the moment, that how much they feel the onus is on them to kind of really attack the game. If they continue to play in a fairly kind of sensible, safe way, as I'd say sort of typical of Fulham, then you're really going to need someone like Eze to have a chance of picking that lock. As you say, they're really experienced, smart, high quality defensive unit. If they go for the game a little bit more, then you almost feel like that would suit Palace better. They'd have more joy just trying to spring quick counts on them. But again, Eze's vitally important in that regard too, because he's so often the one who can sort of find the right weight of pass to Sarr or Munoz or whoever it is who's ultimately going to cut the ball back to John Philippe in the box.
Too predictable.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think it's really really great news for Palace that he is ready to start the game. Another sort of major topic of conversation from Glasner's pre-match press conference was the question of stopping Captain Baby Oil that we were talking about earlier, Adama Traore, and whether the need to contain him and his unique set of talents would inform his decision regarding whether to start Chilwell or Mitchell. Is kind of, like, is that a concern for you, stopping Traore? Would it affect your selection? Is it the route to containing Fulham?
I wouldn't say it's like critical, like whether Chilwell or Mitchell plays. I actually think away from home, starting Mitchell, keeping things tight, is probably more beneficial. And then if we need to push for a equaliser or a winner or something late on, then Chilwell's skill set might be more useful later in the game. I wouldn't say that Traore is and I'm sure Glasner hasn't but he's not like the main attacking threat for Fulham either. Like their front four is actually like really good. Like Raul Jimenez, Iwobi, they both had a lot of goal contributions this year. And then they've got Smith Rowe as well, which he tore us apart in the reverse fixture at Selhurst. So there's like multiple players that we have to worry about. But I think that left side is always going to be a bit of a talking point for the next few weeks with Chilwell coming in. We just know how good that he is and what he can bring, and he is perhaps more of a complete left wing back than Mitchell in terms of he can probably attack better, maybe a bit more composure in the final third. So I think we might see him introduced a bit more, whether that's from the bench or a start. I think definitely in the FA Cup game against Millwall, Chilwell will probably have that opportunity at least. But I mean, Mitchell, he made the mistake against Everton, but other than that, he hasn't really done loads wrong. So I think it would be a bit harsh to drop him here. But then again, Chilwell has got good calibre. So, but at the moment, I can't see Glasner tinkering with the back five too much. He's stuck with it for so long, like it'd be a bit silly to change it now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think there's always a sort of panic about Adama Traore because he looks so explosive and difficult to deal with when he's actually running with the ball at pace. But Glasner insists that both left-back options are capable of dealing with him, and I agree. I think that he's actually the least threatening in many ways, as you say, of Fulham's attacking four. I think the way you deal with Adama Traore is just give him enough space to run the ball out of play. Pretty much, it's not really actually a sensible decision maker when it gets into the final third. He's just kind of a freight train really down the right. That the worst thing you can possibly do is try and engage him. And I agree. I think a sensible move is starting Mitchell just for the kind of defensive chemistry. We don't know really yet. It's still been a long time since Chilwell got 90 minutes in his legs at the top level, and so you do want to ease him in gradually if he even is ever going to take that starting berth. But I'd start Mitchell not really for containing Traore. For me, the bigger threats are I worry more from a Palace point of view about that sort of combination of Iwobi and Smith Rowe, because it is tactically, just by nature of the formation, an area where you can hurt Palace is just sort of overwhelming them in the midfield. As good as Hughes, Lerma, Wharton have been recently, there's only ever two of them.
Yeah.
And Fulham can play in a way where they've really got like four, or with how comfortable Jimenez is on the ball, sometimes even five players kind of flooding that area. And it can lead Palace to be sort of dominated for long periods, or you can kind of pick your way through from that middle channel with players of the quality and form of Iwobi and Smith Rowe. I think that will be definitely a concern for the Eagles in the game. I don't think there'll be anything done to particularly counter that with the rigidity of the system at Palace. But yeah, I think that's definitely an area of danger. Lastly, wrap up our thoughts on the game. How do you ultimately see it going?
To be honest, I'm not confident. I feel them aside. They're a weird team that, I mentioned earlier, they don't lose often, and they just don't really do much that stuns you, or you're like, oh, they're a really good team. They're just solid, aren't they? Which I think is more dangerous for us in a way. So I can see it maybe being a scrappy kind of like 1-0 to them or 2-1 or something. I think our recent encounters have been quite tight, like the odd goal. But yeah, I'm not feeling confident about this one, Joe. So yeah, 1-0 Fulham I'll go with.
I feel like I'll be slightly more positive and stick it with an optimistic 1-1. I just feel both teams draw so many games 1-1 or by similar scores, 1-1s, 2-2s, 0-0s, that surely they've got to get them one against each other. I don't see a situation in which Palace win the game realistically. I think they've gone 6 games without a win against Marco Silva's Fulham. The record's really not good, and with the form they're in, confidence coursing through them after that. What now feels like a really big result, beating Forest last weekend. I just think, I don't really see. I mean, the only way I can see Palace winning is Fulham almost getting overexcited and trying to play above their station and
they're
taking
like the most unoverexcited team.
The most level-headed side in the league.
Yeah.
So I think it screams 1-1 to me, this game. But yeah, with that, we will take a quick pause for a word from the sponsor, and when we come back, we'll be talking about Oliver Glasner's first complete year as Palace boss.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
So this Wednesday marked 1 year of Ollie G being in the Palace. The Austrian skiing enthusiast was brought in as manager to arrest Palace's downhill momentum February last year. So now seems a good time to evaluate his tenure so far. What do you think? So on the whole, Alex, what has he done well in this year as boss?
Well, I think one of the main things from a fan point of view is just sort of galvanising the club a bit more and just bringing a bit of positive football to Palace. We just had so many years of Pulis, Allardyce, Hodgson, not the most inspiring football, but it's got us to where it is now. So can't be too sort of disgruntled about it. But we were crying out at the end of Hodgson's era to have a new lease of life. We tried it with Vieira, didn't work. Whether that was the right decision or not, we'll never know. But obviously we needed a change, a big change, and we went for Glasner, which I think the the relationship has been really good. You just want someone who comes in and gets the club and gets what you're trying to do and gets the players, and you kind of feel that, and you felt that from day one, really. Like, he's just not, Roy said some things towards the end of his time with us that are a bit bizarre, and it was like Glasner was the perfect person we needed just to come in and calm everything down and like get everyone on side, get us pulling in the same direction. And he's done that really well. And yeah, it's just like we go into games now, and it's not like, you actually feel like we're going to be competitive and like have the same amount of chances as the opposition. And when we get the ball, there's like this kind of electric feeling that like, we're going to pile forward and like we're going to get players in the box and be a bit of a menace, which is like what you want as a fan, isn't it? You want to see exciting football. And yeah, I think it's been really good. Like, he's probably, well, in terms of win percentage, he is the best manager we've had in the Premier League in the last 10 years or so. So yeah, like I can't fault him massively. Obviously the start to this season was probably his biggest con of his Palace career. But again, I'm not sure how much like of fault he was for that. We sold Anderson and Elise, like two key players, and like Anderson was obviously a leader, like captain for us for a couple of games. So yeah, it's like he's dealt with that quite well, considering, and where we are now is like I was talking to Wale about this the other day, but in terms of league position, we're actually not that much better than we were under Roy. But there's just this feeling of like we've got everything in place to kick on. It's not like we're just going to survive and we're just going to hover above the relegation zone. It's like, okay, we have potential now. And that's kind of what you want to feel as a fan, really. So, yeah, I mean, the year's flown by, to be fair. Like, it feels like he's been at the club for a while. But, yeah, overall, really pleased with how he's doing at the moment.
Yeah, I think you have to say overall it's a really good job. While, I mean, this is slightly inflated, league position might be a better indicator, actually, of how well he's done. But because this is slightly inflated, perhaps, by his tremendous finish to last season. But the Athletic, I think, sort of stitched together the two parts of a year to make one complete season, and that would put Palace on 54 points, which would be their highest ever. Admittedly, only marginally, but the highest ever in a Prem campaign, which I think speaks to just doing a good job of the resources available. Clearly, I think you're really spot on about the kind of vibes element of it, that he's managed to hit a kind of happy medium of playing a kind of football which is entertaining and progressive and is a platform to build on and do something perhaps more than just survive in the Prem. Totally gets the fans on side, has enough passion for them to relate to him, but also seems to be, from what we can understand, pretty good at the kind of managing up. His football and his demeanour don't scare the Palace board in the same way that perhaps Vieira's and the board, although De Boer might have more results than demeanour was a problem, did. So I think he's really been a great fit in that regard, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for how he weathered the kind of squad upheaval and his tactical stubbornness then, really, because it really wasn't working for the first 10 games of the season, and out of a desperation to just turn results around, a lot of people, including certainly some of us, were kind of saying we need a little tactical tweak here, and I think he made the judgment that it was best to, rather than throwing away the work he'd been doing, just keep pursuing with that. It's a new group and they just need kind of consistency and one solid, simple system for them to gel into. And I think that was a great decision that's really paying dividends now. He's also kind of upcycled Palace, a 15, 16 goal a season striker in Philippe Mateta, who was sat there not doing a whole lot for 3 years, and then suddenly, I'm not sure how much of that is just John Philippe Mateta finding a new gear by coincidence, kind of as Glasner came in, how much of it is Glasner's coaching or tactics, but certainly you have to say that's almost perfectly timed. That the point at which Mateta starts banging in goals is pretty much when Glasner comes. Are there things he could have done better? I think you could argue that while he's upcycled a 15 goal a season striker completely for free, he's got no league goals out of a striker that Palace have paid a lot of money for in the summer as well.
Yeah.
And maybe sort of those big signings, like, because he's so tactically consistent, maybe it means that he doesn't sort of get the best out of the mix of talent and options that Palace have in this. Because I think like Nketiah and Kamada, I feel like there's a possible role for them all. They both offer something kind of different to anyone else in the squad, and it's just not really managed to make that valuable yet. But I think some of the responsibility rests on both of their shoulders for that as well. Yeah. I think he could improve his jumper game sometimes.
He's very Austrian. His jumper is very Austrian, I must say.
That cream one with the kind of raised diamonds looks like a hotel bedsheet. I'm not a fan of. And I think some of the turtlenecks make him look less humble than he actually is.
Me too, yeah. The kind of cream one just makes me feel like he's stuck in December, like around December 20th. Like he just still thinks it's Christmas.
It's always Christmas in Austria.
Yeah,
from like skiing community.
If he's still wearing them in May, I might have some concerns.
Less animated on the touchline.
Yeah. If we get to Wembley and he's like stretching his turtleneck.
I could see it happening. But yeah, I think on the whole, we have to say, great job. First year, Oliver Glasner. Listen, the one remaining question is, how many more years of Glasner do you think we'll see? Is he sticking around for long haul?
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, you never know in football, do you? Like, things can change very quickly. It just takes a few bad results or, a bigger club to come in and it could all change. But yeah, I think what we're building, he seems very on board with it, just from what he says in press conferences and things like that, and how he talks about new signings and stuff. It all seems like he's pulling in the same direction as like Steve Parish and the board and the fans. So I think he is in it for a long-term project. But then again, if we don't achieve success, which probably is getting into the top half of the table at this point, if we probably don't achieve that in the next few years, who knows? But yeah, it's one step at a time. Like, we've got some amazing young players as well from the academy, and we've obviously signed like Wharton and Essay and stuff. So yeah, I mean, onwards and upwards it does feel positive at the moment being a Palace fan, and we don't always get to say that. So yeah, it's looking good at the moment.
I mean, I agree. All signs positive. Seems to have a good relationship with the board and be happy and committed to the work that he's doing there. There are always, it's a fickle business, and if the Palace board weren't afraid to, after a fairly short run of bad results, sack the absolutely terrifying figure that is Patrick Vieira, I don't know if you're afraid to sack Oliver Glasner, but everything seems positive at the moment. I guess the only question would be, he goes home to Austria a lot, and I think his family's still live out there, and you kind of think, so in the summer Bayern approached, didn't they, and then the club just didn't entertain it at all, and he very professionally hasn't kicked up a fuss about it and has got on with things. But another big club in Germany close to home coming in, I feel like it's plausible, and at a certain point the club can't just kind of pretend it isn't happening. Disconnect the phones, and maybe would be tempted. But I don't know, I think he sounds like he's in it for the long run, the way he speaks, and I don't see why Palace would I think he'd now, for me, have to have really a pretty sustained run of terrible football for them to have to justify getting rid of him. I think he's shown his worth enough to buy himself some patience. So I reckon he'll be the custodian for a little while. Speaking of reliable custodians, people that give us a platform to perform. Then we'll have a quick break for a word from the sponsor Zencastr before wrapping up with some cowboy talk.
Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
A video has recently been leaked in which PSG owner Nasser Al-Khelaifi calls your friend and mine, John Textor, a cowboy after he had the audacity to suggest that Ligue 1 should not sell its broadcast rights to beIN Sports, a company of which Al-Khelaifi is the chairman. Naturally, that made me wonder, if we were to make a Crystal Palace themed Western movie, who would star in it? What would it be called? What would the vibe be? So, starting you, Alex, what's your suggestion for a Palace Western?
So I've gone very sort of alliteration with my title here.
Nice.
So I've called it The Shootout at the Saloon. What the basis of this story is, I don't know. Screenplay hasn't been thought up yet, but that's the title I'm going with. I feel like it's got a nice. I think people will be like, yeah, I'll give that a watch. I
agree.
Obviously, every good cowboy film needs like a gunslinger, and who better than John Philip Mateta to play that role? Yes. You could just picture him, with the holsters, like going in for the swinging doors.
I think it's a good build for a cowboy.
Yeah, you sort of got the stat. I could imagine wearing the hat as well to like cover up the baldness. Like, I think it would work quite nicely for him. So he would definitely be my kind of like main bad person in the film.
Is he a villain? He's not a kind of anti-hero.
Yeah, he's a villain. So he's like terrorizing the villagers, not villagers, whatever, townsfolk. And then I'd go with someone like Joel Ward, obviously, as like the town sheriff, like 100% the town sheriff.
Joel Ward.
I'm just imagining this is taking place in like a saloon type place, obviously because of the title. And then I'd have like Remi Matthews or someone behind the bar, just the sort of not the main character by any stretch, but he just needs a role to play.
Remi Matthews doing all the extras roles.
Yeah, he can be the barman, the waiter, just the extras is fine. I'm not sure like where Glasner fits into all of this though. Maybe I think he would be like, usually in a Western you have like the table of people who aren't really involved in it. They're just there playing like dominoes or like cards or something. I can imagine him there with like,
trying to keep his head down. Have a nice game of dominoes. Well,
yeah, him and Uncle Mark in the corner, just playing some cards or something. So that's kind of like what I've got as the premise, as the like the characters. Like, but what happens in this cowboy film, I don't know. The setup's there, but like storyline, I have no idea.
It's a vivid image for me. Yeah. I can see it.
Yeah,
I can see it on my mind's eye. I can see a role for like Amelia Jednak or someone in there as well.
Oh yeah,
I feel like maybe a sort of deranged preacher or something like that.
Yeah, there is always one, isn't there? So I could imagine him playing that role quite well.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I'd certainly buy tickets. It sounds more engaging than my suggestion. I kicked around the idea of Wayne Hennessy and the Sundance Kid at one point, but I couldn't really make it work. So I've gone instead Roy Story, which would be a film featuring a cowboy called Woody Spout ROOD, who wanders the desert with his partner, which would be John Philippe Matexas, played by The Rock in this. And basically, in true Roy fashion, who would be playing a leading role, of course, they would just like always have enough water, get by securing a steady supply of low risk, low reward jobs until the film just kind of peters out of nowhere. And every year they'd release the exact same film, just in different clothes, until box office pressures force them to stop production eventually, because no one's going through the gates anymore. So yeah, that's my suggestion.
There's always usually it's like a strong start as well. I imagine this starts strong, and then it just demises into boringness.
Odd jobs, rounding people up for the sheriff, but not shooting anyone.
Just forced into retirement eventually.
Yeah. Who would eyes of boredom at some point.
Who would you have play Roy Hodgson? You mentioned The Rock for Mateta.
No, I'll get The Rock. Test his range like Tom Hardy in Legend or whatever. Get The Rock to play Hodgson and Mateta. Alternately, I don't know. Yeah, I have to give it some thought. That do you think the most kind of owl-like actors? What a Dambon back in the day, probably. But
okay, who's
the pool of, without being too disrespectful, the pool of actors who could play Roy Hodgson is consistently diminishing.
Yeah, you're probably true. Who's the Star Wars guy? Can't remember his name. No, I don't know.
Han Solo.
Yeah, that guy.
Harrison Ford.
I could see
that. Yeah, I could see that.
Harrison Ford and The Rock.
yeah, I think that'll work. Well.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins, maybe.
Oh yeah, that would be good. So he's got the kind of like the kind of look that he could turn like Roy had occasionally. Like if he said something wrong, he could like switch.
Sort of affable, but he has a bit of menace in the eyes.
Yeah, I think that would be a better shout. To be fair, yeah.
Nice. Well, The Rock and Anthony Hopkins in the Roy Story. So I think that will. Well, sell no tickets, as I say, but it would entertain me briefly. Speaking of brief entertainment, I think that's probably all we've got time for today. I might have lost Alex, but I thank him in his absence. Alex, you still there? I thought I lost you for a second there. Well, thank you, Alex, if you can or can't hear me, for joining me today. And thank you all for listening. Give us 5 gun singing stars if you've enjoyed the episode. And we hope you tune in again when we're back next Monday.
Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.